Good morning and welcome to another Micrographics Autodesk webinar. Today what we are looking at is Autodesk Vault, what's new for 2025 and the latest update releases 2025.1 and 2025.2. Micrographics Autodesk. So my name is Carl van Rooyen. I'm an application engineer with Micrographics, and I'll be walking you through the what's new as mentioned for the 2025 release and the subsequent point 1 and point 2 updates. So let's have a look on today's agenda. We will have a short introduction about what has been brought in, sort of a broad overview of how the improvements will help. Then we'll dive into administration improvements, general improvements throughout Vault. Then we'll have a look specifically at lifecycle email notifications. This was brought in with 2025. Then we'll have a look at some improvements on Thin Client. And finally, we'll close off with a summary and Q&A. So to start off on our introduction, a lot of the improvements that have been made with the release to market or 2025 release and then the subsequent updates has helped with the ease of administration, specifically in standardizing the rollout of Vault, being able to standardize options that are used by the clients as well as server-side options that push through to those clients. So we'll see a couple of sections where we talk about distributed options, and those options can be pushed out to the clients from an administrator. And then also still from the administration side is the ability to add a bit more control and security with one of the things that we see included here now is password policies, where administrator can enforce password policies for users. We'll see how that is implemented and how that affects the users. Then from a communication perspective, there's improved communication through the email notifications. So we'll see that email notifications has been expanded now, not only in ECOs, but now also into lifecycle transitions. So there under email notifications for the lifecycles, we'll have a look at how that is implemented and how it can be rolled out so that your users are notified of lifecycle changes. And then we have a couple of quality of life improvements that we will see throughout the presentation. The presentation itself, we'll see that I've broken it down into the various sections as shown in the agenda, and I've made notes on each of the slides where this improvement has been brought in. Let's say if you are using Vault 2025 and the improvement that I'm covering is in 2025.2, I'll make that note there so that you'll see, okay, if we want to have this improvement in our current Vault setup, we would need to update to that specific pack. So you will see in the main header of my slide currently where I have introduction, I will have a note there that says basic or pro, or basic and pro, or maybe just the one, to give you an idea if the topic I'm covering is specifically for Vault Basic or for Vault Pro, or if it is included in both Vault releases, as well as then under the subheadings for the topic that's being covered, we'll have the release version. So if it's the 2025 or point 1 or point 2 update. So we'll jump straight into administration, the password policies. This was implemented in the 2025 release. You can see there at the top, administration, basic and pro. So this applies for both license types, whether you're using the free basic that's included with your license or the professional Vault license. And essentially here in a nutshell, we're now able to, within the Vault settings, configure a password policy. So whoever is an administrator is able to switch this on, and we can see in the image here on the right hand side, the administrator is able to choose how the password policy should be configured. So we can see that we have the ability to set a minimum password length, whether lowercase and uppercase numbers or special characters are required within the password policy. Now, how does this impact users? Users might have very simple passwords currently, and if they log into Vault once this has been enabled, they will be prompted to change their password or reset their password when they log in. So they may get a message that tells them your password does not meet the policy, you need to generate a new password. For users that already have a long, complicated password, if it meets the password policy, they will just log in, no problems. Then also released with 2025, available for Vault Basic and Pro, is the Purge folder functionality. Now you will see that I've kind of split this a little bit. There's Purge folder, where an administrator or a project administrator can right click on a folder and they can choose to purge, and that will then purge files out of that folder. This is available in the right click menu or in the edit menu. We can see that on the right hand side. And there is also now an option to be able to purge on lifecycle transition. So this would be with Vault Professional. You need to be able to set up file lifecycles, and as those files go from, let's say, work in progress to a released lifecycle, then that action would be applied on the actions portion of the transition. And here we can see in the image actually editing the state from a work in progress to release, that transition for those states, that purge action can be applied. So that portion there needs the Vault Pro to be able to apply it to the lifecycle transition. So why would we want to purge a folder? It's nice to know that we can do this, but the reason for purging a folder would essentially be looking at removing any old versions that are no longer required. So the purge will go into Vault onto the server side, and this is why it's an admin only option. It will look at, okay, we have 20 versions of this file. Vault has been set up to keep the last 3 versions or versions for the last month. Anything older than that can be purged, and that saves space on the server side. So as files are going into, let's say, a released state, we can be clearing off space in older versions that are no longer required from the server. Just a short one here from a backup perspective. Vault has allowed you to do a database only backup. This was implemented, I think it was in 2024, where you can back up only the database. However, in 2025.1, what they've done is when you do a database backup only, it now resets the days since last backup counter. So they've got it highlighted in the red box. Prior to the 0.1 update for 2025, that counter would not reset to 0. So even if you did a database only backup and you manually backed up your file store, that would still show a number that counted back to the last full server backup. Where in this case now, if you do a database only backup, that clears back to 0 on the day you do the backup. So just a small improvement there on the backup side for administrators. Then earlier on I spoke about standardization and a bit of configuration. In the 2025.2 release, there's a bit more client configuration now available, where an administrator can set options to be distributed out to the client machines, so to Vault client. So what happens here is that your administrator goes into the options settings within Vault, And at the bottom of the screen, there is a Manage Distributed Options button that allows you to set a default set of options that gets pushed to each Vault client. Then once the user logs in, they will have those options set up, and then they can choose to modify and tweak those settings as required after they have been rolled out. This is available for the Vault client, so that is your Vault Professional or Vault Basic client installation. Then within that client, Copy Design also has distributed options. So we can see here within the Copy Design window, you can go to options, and then as an administrator, you'd be able to manage distributed options within Copy Design. This is also true for the AutoCAD and Inventor Vault add-ins. So from an add-in perspective, inside of, let's say, Inventor, you can go to Vault options and generate some distributed options and set the distributed options. So we're going to jump into a demo here. Just to have a quick look where we can see some of these changes. So I'm going to go ahead here and jump into Vault Professional 2025. I've got the update installed here, and we can see that I'm logged in as an administrator. I've got the green administrator bar at the bottom, and by right clicking on a folder, just want to have a look at the first option there. We've got that purge. We're able to purge or set this to purge, and that will then run on the server side and purge old versions away from that folder. Alternatively, we can go edit, and we'll have a purge option over there. So quite quick and easy to be able to grab an entire folder. There might be hundreds of files within that folder, and purge all the old versions from those files. Then from a distributed options perspective, you would go to Tools, Options, and in the Options dialog box, as highlighted in the presentation, there is a Manage Distributed Options at the bottom. When you click to open this up, you will see that you're able to enable a couple of distributed options here. So we can choose if you want everybody to be on the current theme, which is dark theme in my case. I can push through that distributed theme from this setup that I currently have. And we can see there's document preview, configuration prompts, various options here that can be pushed through to the other clients. So your administrator would set this up, enable what needs to be pushed through, and sort of set up as a default for the clients, for the users, and they can then modify if required from there. So hitting OK will then apply those distributed options, and the next time a user logs in, those options will be pulled across and applied to their account. So we'll see that these distributed options, we're essentially enabling, yes, we want to enable configure prompts. And here in the main options dialog box, I can then go as an administrator and configure the prompts, and however I configure these prompts, they will be pulled across to the other users. So that is the Vault distributed options. And then if we have a quick look at Copy Design, I'm going to grab a subassembly here, do a Copy Design. We will see the same under Copy Design. We can go to Options, Manage Distributed Options, and we have a similar dialog box with the options. So we can see here things like, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, always reuse library files. Very useful to make sure that any content center or library components get reused, they don't get copied. You can push this setting across to other users by enabling that, hitting OK, and then under options, if I check that always reuse library files, that switched on will then push through to the clients. So you're able to push these settings through to the other users as well, much as we saw with the Vault settings. And this even goes down to Inventor as well. if I go to Vault options inside of the Inventor Vault add-in, we will see here manage distributed options as well. And we have a list of 4 options here we can push through for the other users. Okay, so that is just a quick view there on where we would find the distributed options, various areas, and what we can actually control with that. And what we'll do here is we'll move on now to the next section, which is copy design. Now there's a big change here. Years ago, Autodesk overhauled the copy design functionality, and that overhauled functionality they rolled out into Vault Professional and back then Vault Workgroup, which is no longer available. And they brought in this new copy design functionality for Vault Pro. And your Vault basic users were stuck with the older copy design. What Autodesk have done now is they've brought that newer Vault Pro copy design functionality into Vault Basic. So there's no longer the old Vault Basic copy design. It is now updated to match. So we have a more consistent experience between using Vault Basic and Vault Professional. So if you are a Vault Basic user and you do upgrade to Vault Professional, there won't be any change then in the copy design. The reason for this is that the new copy design is a much more flexible copy design process. There's a lot more flexibility and control in what you can and can't do with the files as you copy. It's also a modeless dialog box, which means that you can open up a copy design, you can start configuring your copy, and then let's say you get interrupted and you need to do something else. You can minimize that dialog box. You can carry on working in Vault. You can add more files and folders into Vault. You can work with Vault and then come back later to the copy design, open it up, hit refresh, maybe refresh any information that's in the copy design, and continue to work with your copy design. So that modeless dialog box is very flexible. You might want to replace or put something into that copy design that's not already in Vault. And so you can go to Vault, add it, come back to the copy design without losing any of the work that you've already done. It's also highly customizable. The panels can be shifted and moved to wherever you want to dock them, left, right, top, bottom. The grid is also customizable so that you can put whatever properties you want to view within that grid. And we have various panels and different panes that we've got. So we've got the main sort of grid with all the information. Then on the right hand side, currently I've only got the numbering panel, but there are 4 panels that can be displayed on the right hand side there. Part of copy design, you can also set up rules. These rules can look at properties that are within the design. So there could potentially be a description or stock code, maybe a project number, and that rule can look at, okay, there's a project number, we need to change the project number or clear it so that we don't accidentally reuse the old project number. So rules can be set up to run when the file is copied. Certain things have to happen to that file as it's being copied. And then on the right hand side there is a numbering panel. As I mentioned here, we've got that numbering panel that allows you to go through the renaming and sorting and changing prefix, suffix, doing find and replace operations for being able to rename and renumber files within the copy design. So that is improvements brought in with the 2025 upgrade. Then with the 0.1 update, the reuse library files option was added. I actually showed that as one of the distributed options. So there's the ability to choose to reuse library files. And this allows you to quickly set all library files to be reused. For this to be available, Oh, sorry, so these are available in the right-click menu when you select a branch or a library file itself. However, the library files option needs to be set to show. So here in the image, we go in the copy design, you're able to go to View, Show Children, and then enable the library files option. So during copy design, the library files will be listed. Then in the right-click menu, you will have the ability to reuse the branch or reuse a specific library file. So if I go back here, right clicked on the main assembly, there's an option to reuse branch library files. Or if you right click on a specific library file, you can choose to reuse it. Now by default, if I skip back a little bit here, by default the library files are not shown. So that show children library files is typically off. That means that they are not shown in the grid, but they are not copied. They are automatically set to reuse if they are not shown in the grid. Same with the drawings. If the drawings are not shown, they are automatically copied with the parents essentially. So in this case here, this will be one of those cases where you may have library files that you want to create copies of so that you can modify them and make changes to those library files. But we have the ability here now to either choose to reuse or copy those library files. So jumping ahead, one smaller change there made in the 0.2 release is now the ability to always reuse library files. So there's that toggle, you can switch that on and it stays on, and every time you do a copy design, library files will always be set to reuse by default. So there's a nice little option there to enforce that as well. So we'll quickly go into a demo here, once again, in that copy design environment. We'll go to View. Currently my show children, we've got the add library or library files is on, so we can see the library files here in the copy design. If I right click and choose to copy branch, that is going to copy everything. And we see that the library files here, even though they are visible and I said copy branch, they do not set to copy because my options is set to always reuse library files. So we can actually see, okay, we are using these library files, but because my option is set to always reuse, even though I chose to copy the entire branch, it excluded those library components. If you do need to recopy or copy one of these library components for any reason, you can right click on it and we'll see here now I still have that option enabled, so we cannot actually do that copy. We could change to reuse if it was not reused, but we can see we can't copy. We can always turn that off and then go to individual files and we can see we can say copy or reuse on that library file. So it just adds a bit of a master switch here, allowing you to force that those library files get reused, and it prevents you from accidentally copying any of those files. Just from a customization point of view then here as well, we've got on the right hand side the different panels. Currently I have the numbering panel here. If I click on numbering, it shows the original file name and the destination name with prefix, base name, and suffix. So you can change your naming here on this panel. And then there's an actions panel which allows you to filter all of your files according to the action being applied. So we can go to copy and we can see the list of all the files being copied. And we can go to, let's say, reuse, and we can see a list of files being reused. If there were files being replaced, they would be listed here and so on. So this gives you a nice quick check. You can see, okay, what is going on here with my files, as well as the action column in the main grid. We can see there's an action column and it lists the actions for each of those files within the design. And we can expand out our sub-assemblies and see those actions as well. One thing I do like about the layout is you can keep this according to your assembly structure. So currently it's showing that assembly structure, And if you go to layout, that is called the tree view, but we can also sort this into a list view to get a flat list of all the files. And then I like to do this to be able to sort by the action, and we can then see all the copied files listed, all of the reused files. If there's no action, the file is being reused, so we can see all those files being reused, and so on with the other actions that are being applied. This also allows you to sort by sort alphabetically as well. So it doesn't look at the structure of the assembly, it just looks at file naming. So we have the various options there as well. Folder view will actually show you the folder locations inside of Vault, so you can get a good idea of where those files are going to exist in Vault as well. So very customizable here on this copy design. A lot more options available to you. If you have been using the Vault basic copy design, you'll see that there's a lot more functionality and flexibility here. Okay, so we'll move on now to criteria-based search. Essentially here, they've just done some search enhancements. If you create a search and save that search can now be applied to your basic search within Vault. So you can apply that criteria that is being used in your search. So in this case here, I've created and saved a search that looks for the description property, and it looks for an empty description. So any files where the description is empty will be found by this search. So that's my criteria. We're looking for empty descriptions. This criteria that has been now saved as a search, so no description search there, can then be applied to the basic search that is directly inside of your Vault, your main view in Vault, your main grid. So we can see, we can put in a search and we can apply the criteria that is in that no description search. I will do a demo of this. It'll make a little bit more sense inside of Vault, but we have this ability now to search for a specific string, let's say a part number or portion of a part number or project, and then apply criteria, in this case, looking for files that don't have descriptions assigned to them. So that is an improvement in 2025 with the basic search. And then we just have a list of some general improvements here in 2025.1 as part of the 0.1 update. Users can change their password in the thin client, so there's no need to use the Vault thick client. Prior to the 0.1 update, if somebody tried to log in using the thin client and their password did not meet the enforced password policy, they would then have to have gone to a different user that has a license to be able to log into Vault Pro. So this is specifically a Vault Pro thing here with the use of the thin client. That thin client user had to then go and log into Vault using an actual Vault professional installation and change their password. With 0.1, this password change can now be done inside of the thin client. So they log in with, let's say, Chrome, they go into thin client, they can then change the password. So just a nice improvement there. They don't have to rely on somebody else to assist with changing the password. So that's an improvement there on Vault Pro. And then the next two are for Vault Basic and Vault Pro. Move focus. This is just a simple thing when moving files in Vault. You can drag and drop files from one folder to another. The focus essentially is going to be which folder is going to be active once the move is complete. So you can set the focus to move or stay on the source location, the source folder where the files came from, or once the files are moved, that can become the active folder. So the location, the destination location can become the active folder. This is something that would have to be modified in an XML file. So there's a little bit of documentation on what needs to be changed on this within the release notes, but that is something that can be modified. And then a very big one. This is something that I get phone calls a lot on from a help perspective is I can't find my dialog box. I'm trying to check a file in or check a file out and I can't find the dialog box. What's happened is the dialog box may have gone off screen and you can't find it. So you can now reset dialog locations using a command in command prompt. So you would start up your standard Windows command prompt and there are two commands that can be run. One resets just the dialog box locations and the other does a complete reset of the Vault client itself. So if you're having any other weird issues with Vault client, you can do a complete reset of Vault client, much like the Inventor reset utility, but it's done through command prompt. That once again, also those commands, they are in the release notes for 2025.1. And just some general updates in point 1 for Vault Professional. There's a command, synchronize properties, that has now been added into the records tab of an ECO. So on the right hand side there, I've got an ECO open with a file in the ECO, and you can now essentially right click on that record and choose to synchronize properties. This will essentially look at Vault's properties and the files are properties and synchronize them according to how that is mapped in the properties section. In the past, you had to browse to that file. If there were multiple files, you'd have to go to each file's location where it's stored in Vault to be able to synchronize properties. So this now allows you to synchronize properties from within the ECO. You can highlight all of the files. There might be 10, 20 files in the ECO, and you can synchronize properties directly from inside the ECO. Just a nice little quality of life improvement there. Then we're moving on to the @me search. So going back to the search options, what you can do now basically when you're doing a basic or advanced search, in the value field, you can put @me. And what that does is it replaces it with your display name. So rather than having to put in the full display name, if you're searching for, let's say, files created by, and then you want to put your username in, you don't have to type in the entire username. You can just search for files where the created by value is, and then you put in @me. It's much quicker to type in, and it replaces it with the logged in user's display name. This is also helpful for administrators that are creating distributed searches. You can create one distributed search that has the @me, and then it doesn't matter who logs in and uses that search, it will always show them results for files that have their name in the value. So you don't have to have a search for each user looking for their specific username. So that's quite useful there from a distributed search perspective. This can also be used with the different operators. So the is not, contains, does not contain operators. So within the search criteria that can be set up. And this option is available in the thick, thin, mobile, and the add-ins. So no matter where you create a search, you are able to use the @me option. Very useful here as well. This was brought in 25.1, and it is backwards compatible. So if you are running a 2025.1 server or .2 server, you can still log in with the 2025 and 2024 client and run the @me search. So that there is quite useful, that it does allow for the older versions of Vault to be able to access that functionality. Okay, so let's have a look at how that would work inside of Vault. So I'm going to go ahead here to this parts folder. We've got some parts here, and we'll have a look at the two different search options there. So currently what I want to do here is just have a look at the saved search. So if I go ahead and access the find command, I can open up an existing saved search. There it is, no description. And we can see the criteria here, description is empty. So we're looking for files that have no descriptions in them. And so if I run that search, we get quite a long list. over here. Now, within the basic search, I've got this parts folder. I'd like to find all the files with a specific, let's say, number. So I'm going to look for all the 0112 files that have no description. So we can search for parts 0112. And if I just run that search as is, we see that we get some with and without descriptions. So what we can do here now is we can add that criteria for no description, and it will now search, when we hit the search again, for files that have 0112 in the part number, but do not have descriptions. So we get a much shorter list. So that allows you to apply that criteria or not to your search and just refine that search down a little bit nicer. Then lastly here, what we can also do is, if I go into, let's say, I'm going to go into the packaging machine folder and run a search. I'm going to do just a advanced search here. I'm going to look for property. Let's have a look for created by contains, and I'm going to do the @me and add that in. And if I do a find here now, we'll see we get a list of folders and files that were created by the current logged in user. So bottom right hand side, currently logged in as Cole. There it is, created by Cole. And that can be saved as a distributed search. As mentioned, any user can log in and use that distributed search, and it just substitutes their login name for the @me, and it'll give them a list of their files that they created. Okay, then lastly, the next thing is the big one, the lifecycle email notifications. Now this is a Vault Pro update. So for those of you with Vault Basic, you wouldn't be looking at lifecycles. It's not available in Basic. But for those with Vault Pro, this has now been something that's added in. The idea here is to improve communication between users. You may have your designers and your management that maybe don't communicate properly. And as soon as files are being put into, let's say, a review state, management needs to know so that they can review. Maybe there's an engineer that needs to sign off. And so what can happen here is that those transitions can be set up to then send an email. So the user can go from, let's say, work in progress, push their file into a review state, and when that happens, an email gets sent off to the required users. So this notifies users of that lifecycle change. This happens on predetermined transitions. So administrator would set this up so that at specific transitions, certain people are emailed. There is also an email template that can be set up and used. So that email template can be standardized and pushed out to the users when they need to get notified. And for each of these transitions, you can set a specific recipient. So you may have a recipient for the transition where you go work in progress to for review, but you can have a different set of recipients for review into released. When it's released, you need to let manufacturing know, okay, these files have been released, so they can get an email showing the file that has been released. So just the second slide I have here for this shows the template configuration. So we can create as many templates as needed. You add them to the table at the top, give it a name and a description, and then below you can set up the various information. So the name, the description, the subject, and then the body of the email can be compiled. You'll notice there's doc variable file name.name that pulls information from the document that's being released, and you can see on the top right there, add property allows you to add those properties into the email, so it auto fills that information into the email. Okay, so short little demo here for those administrators. If you want to find that, you would go to Tools, Administration, Vault Settings, And then under behaviors, where you find your life cycles and revisions, there is a notifications option. So under notifications, you would be able to set this up. You can choose your release process, so your life cycles, your actual life cycle state, so which setup you're using, and then from which state to which state. So in this case, work in progress to for review. We'll use the default template, and you then add your recipients. So we can go add members and choose them from existing users within Vault. So we can, okay, if that happens, if we go from work in progress to review, Carl needs to get an email, and we then add that in, and you can then populate this table with as many of those transitions and email notifications as required. So a nice quick way there of ensuring everyone is kept in the loop with what's going on with the files in Vault. This does require the email service be set up, the same email service that would be required for the emails for ECO notifications. That is also going to be used for this setup. So I'm going to close out of that. So that is where you would find those options. Get back to the demo here. Then lastly, we get into Thin Client. Just a couple of changes in Thin Client. Once again, Thin Client is for Vault Pro only. So here we'll see changes brought in with 2025. As an administrator, when you log into Thin Client, you are able to make a couple of changes. You are able to choose whether or not the files, items, or change order workspaces are visible. One of them, at least one of them, has to be visible. It can also be set as your default landing page. You will find your default landing page cannot be hidden. So let's say files is our default landing page. We can then hide the items and change order workspaces from the Thin Client. So if you have users that, if everybody only accesses files, you can hide the other two workspaces. As well as customizing the logo. We can see here, top left-hand corner of Thin Client, I've placed a Micrographics logo. That logo is then the one that users will see rather than a Autodesk Vault Thin Client logo. So it just adds a bit more company branding into that. So just some small changes there on the Thin Client side to just help with some standardization on the Thin Client. So to close off in summary, the updates 2025 as well as point 1 and point 2 bring us more administrative control to Vault in the way of the distributed options, allowing us to distribute those options from an administrative setup through to each of the clients. Also enables a bit more, enables better security with password policies. This way your built-in Vault users accounts can have enforced password policies placed on them, and prevents users from having blank passwords or very short easy passwords. And then we saw some Thin Client improvements there with regards to resetting of passwords as well as customization on what workspaces show in the Thin Client or not. And then also one of the bigger ones here is the better communication with the email notifications on those lifecycle changes. Being able to communicate with other role players in the company saying, okay, these files are now in a specific state. It's now your turn to do your work on those files. And then generally overall an improved experience within Vault with these quality of life updates, the updated copy design for Vault Basic, the library file improvements in copy design, those quality of life updates that just make it a bit easier to work with the software. So drawing to an end here now, open up to some Q&A. Feel free to put some questions in the live chat on YouTube, and I'll go ahead and answer those questions as they come through. Okay, I don't see any questions coming through on the live chat. If you are watching this after the fact and you're not watching this live, feel free to email any questions through to me. You'll see my email address on the Q&A panel here on screen, carl@mgfx.co.za, and then I can get back to you with regards to those questions with some answers. If you are a Vault user and you require assistance with upgrading to 2025 or any of the updates for 2025, feel free to contact us as well. As Micrographics, we are Autodesk resellers, as well as we provide support for the software. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and close off the webinar. I'd like to thank you for your attendance, whether you watched live or after the fact, watched the recording. Thank you for watching through to the end, and once again, if you have any questions, feel free to email through and we'll get back to you on that. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.